You are now listening to Extreme Cinema with Andrew Legank and David Lawler. If you like sex and violence, evil brunettes, and angelic blondes, then stick with us as we debate some of the best and worst of action and exploitation filmmaking.
This is Extreme Cinema, action and exploitation movies with Andrew Legank and David Lawler. Just like the lady said, I'm Dave, he's Drew. How are you, Drew?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm okay. How's the hammer hanging?
The hammer is hanging to the left.
Okay, how's your brand new area rug?
My brand new area rug is amazing. It has only been scratched at by the dog once.
Oh, yeah.
Never mind that shit.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm excited, yes. Andrew. You know why I'm excited? You know why I'm jumping up and down on my seat?
You know why? Why?
I interviewed Fred Olen Ray.
Holy moly!
This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy.
So last Saturday, I was watching Haunting Fear last week, and I still really love that movie. I figured, what the hell? I'll take a look and see if he has a web presence, which of course he does. And I emailed him through his official site. I'm expecting nothing. I'm expecting no answer whatsoever. But he gets back to me the next day. And basically I say, look, my wife and kid are gone for 10 days, so anytime you want to do this, I'll be down for it. He's like, okay. And I said, do you do audio Skype? No. I have no idea.
No.
I have a phone number. That's what I have.
Fuck you and your Skype. What are you, some kind of chainsaw worshiper? Get out of here.
So we set up this phone interview for the 12th. I guess 5 o'clock his time. He's out in Los Angeles. And this is what we'll be hearing throughout the course of this episode. I'm going to throw in these little interview bits where we talk about the two movies. Featured in this episode, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers and Haunting Fear.
What would you little maniacs like to do first?
Fred Olen Ray is, he's a personal hero of mine. He's another guy who just gets out there and makes movies. He makes fun movies, action, adventure, science fiction, horror, erotic thrillers, even family movies and TV shows. So he's like incredibly prolific. He's also ultra cool for giving me his time for the interview. And he's like, I was telling you before.
He seems like such a great guy. He really does.
I was telling you before that he's very pragmatic. He's very forward-thinking, and he's big on the business side of the filmmaking. He even wrote a book about that before it became popular that filmmakers would self-distribute. He wrote a book called The New Poverty Row, and he was talking about how filmmakers, especially on the lower end of the scale, the ones that aren't the superstars that work in the studios, have to really, distribute, finance, figure it out themselves.
Right.
And he didn't go to film school, and he always makes this joke that he says, you can basically tell I didn't go to film school if you look at one of my films. But that's, the thing is, film school is kind of a big scam because, we only hear about less than a handful of successful filmmakers who emerge from film school and have careers. A lot of them just abandon it and wind up with huge student loans, liberal arts, and all that stuff.
I think, like anything else, being immersed in the actual business is far greater an education than going to school for 4 years.
Yeah,
and it's pretty much that way for almost every line of work, really. There are some things where study is required, like being a doctor, for instance. But in terms of film school, what do you do in film school?
You
the thing there
movies.
that's most useful. There's two things: you meet people that you might know that you might be able to network with after you leave, and you meet and you practice making some movie stuff. But you can do the same thing if you go get a job as a PA. Go
yeah,
get.
If you look at the great film directors of the past, like an Alfred Hitchcock, who did not go to film school, he just went to an art and design school.
Right.
John Ford, Orson Welles, Stanley Kubrick, people like that. They didn't go to film school. They were too busy creating film. And then when we get to the late 60s, early 70s, you have George Lucas, Francis Coppola, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, people like that. They went to film school, so they kind of sold this premise of film school being perfect for you based on their success. And
film school is for the underlings, not the real creative people. I think that I find really, really creative people are often hamstrung by rigid education, like by going to college and following all those rules and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's for the people that work for the creative people.
You know what my film school was? My film school was cable TV in the 80s. I watched tons of movies, and all I need to know at that point is how you deconstruct the film, how it's a combination of the images and the words and the editing and the sound.
My film school was watching USA Up All Night
with Rhonda or Gilbert.
With both. Well, I liked it.
I'm Gilbert Gottfried. Welcome to Up All Night. We see movies.
You do a good Gilbert Gottfried. I like it.
Yeah, I've been working on it for years.
Rhonda did take it to a new level, though.
Rhonda, I was like, yay.
She wouldn't have had to worry about no titties for the rest of her life, boy. You know, she was set and she was looking good, son.
That's the truth, baby.
I looked at a lot of weird Andy Warhol movies that were on Up All Night.
What do we got?
Let's get to Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers because we have a lot to cover.
Hookers. Yes, we have a lot on the table tonight.
When you work in Hollywood, you learn fast that there's just two kinds of girls in a town like this. Sweet, shy, innocent ones. You know, the ones you want to take home to mom. And then there are the other kind. The ones you just want to take home.
Music does something.
Sometimes they like to play a little rough, but then these aren't your average girls.
Oh, no!
And this isn't your average movie. If you haven't figured out by now, there's something for everybody. Well, almost everybody. There's action, romance, and a cast of thousands. It's Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. These girls charge an arm and a leg.
I think it's time somebody cut you down to size, Jack. Have you ever considered therapy?
I'm going to enjoy splattering you.
Hostile. Very hostile. But a great set.
Yeah, I know.
We have an opening disclaimer, which is awesome. The
It really
chainsaws used in this motion picture are real and dangerous. They're handled here by seasoned professionals. The makers of this motion picture advise strongly against anyone attempting to perform these stunts at home, especially if you are naked and about to engage in strenuous sex. My conscience is clear. Signed, Fred Olen Ray.
Is that what you're telling me?
It's this is a really fun movie. I really enjoy it.
The tongue is firmly planted in cheek right from the start, right from that first title card.
Absolutely,
yeah. And that really sets the tone right there of what
we
you can
already
expect.
know where we're headed.
Yeah.
It doesn't take itself seriously.
Not at all.
It's got this nice noir quality to it.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's kind of it's got a little bit like the cheesy noir quality. Jay Richardson plays that detective.
He does a really good job on this
hard-boiled detective character who needs a shave.
At first glance, it looks like it wouldn't be out of place in the Trauma catalog. You start with.
I think this is the kind of movie that Trauma would love to make and doesn't quite know how. This actually hits the mark of what Trauma really always wants to do and doesn't do very well.
It has a kind of what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of like Toxic Avenger, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but Toxic Avenger. The biggest problem with Toxic Avenger was the tone problem. It was because it was funny, but then it was so disgusting that it would make you want to throw up. Now, some people like that. I personally don't. If they had toned that down a little bit, it might have been a different story. Here, they made an interesting choice. I know that they could have afforded corn syrup instead of what looks like water with food coloring in it for blood, but they didn't. They made it look, I think, maybe intentionally fake.
Well,
because
definitely.
It would have been too much if it really looked real.
That's true.
and maybe that's something that Troma could have done.
It was kind of it was not meant to the violence that occurs, like in the opening scene, obviously with Michelle Bauer,
right,
singing and dancing, taking her clothes off, putting on a shower cap,
and then putting plastic all over
putting
stuff.
plastic on the Elvis
it's
poster.
Classic. It's classic.
And what we're seeing is not serious because the guy is just like laying there going, "Oh no!"
Yeah,
and she's like, I guess we don't really see the chainsaw enter the body. We just see her kind of plunging it, and then blood getting,
and then there's blood spraying up out of. Oh, it's not really blood though. Like I said, it's like water with food coloring in it or something. Yeah, and and you see body parts flying backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very cartoonish. It doesn't go for realism, and I think that was a good choice. Really. I bet you, look, they didn't have a lot of money to spend on this movie, obviously.
Yeah.
They couldn't even give poor Linnea Quigley a cheeseburger, for God's sake.
That's not fair. And Linnea is gorgeous. She's a beautiful woman.
She's a beautiful woman, but she was like unhealthily skinny at that point in her.
Well, she's also very small. She's not like as shapely or voluptuous as Michelle Bauer.
Michelle Bauer's hot, man. She
is.
Yeah.
Great ass!
There's a lot of... the dialogue is kind of hilarious here because there's a lot of dick jokes. And pun jokes,
Yeah.
Like, at one point somebody says, "Just what I need, a private dick in my face."
Yeah.
And then, being a dick is a 24-hour-day job. So on the Laserdisc, which I watched, I dug out my Laserdisc. I gave it a spin in my Laserdisc player. Michelle Bauer's interviewed. She talks about how they used an Elvis song for her to dance to, and she sings along, but they don't use the Elvis song in the finished movie, but like the sound alike. So I get a feeling a lot of this was put together with Elvis songs playing in the background. But it was, even if they had the money to afford the Elvis song in the finished movie, they probably wouldn't have gotten it because Colonel Parker is extremely stingy. He doesn't give out he never gave out Elvis songs at that time.
Oh, talk about stiff joints.
Oh, yeah.
Relax, baby, relax. We don't want this to be over before we even get started, do we?
I'm relaxing.
I've got just the thing to loosen you up. Now close your eyes, and Mercedes will bring you a big surprise.
What are you doing?
You just keep those eyes closed and leave the driving to us, big boy.
Oh, yeah.
Your request is my demand!
Oh, no! Oh, no! Oh, no!
So the movie has a great retro psychobilly quality to it. Brown would love the music. She likes that kind of music. But so Jay's looking for a cute runaway named Samantha, who's played by Linnea Quigley.
Come on, Mick, let's have a little professional courtesy, huh? After all, we're both on the same side of the law.
Only because you haven't been caught yet.
No, you don't want to believe all those things you read in those dime novels, do you? Some of us are honest.
That's what this town's been needing for a long time. An honest dick.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm about as honest as any man on the force.
Then you should be locked up. What do you want, Jack?
Looking for a girl named Samantha Kelso. Goes by Sam sometimes. I heard you had somebody down in lockup. Looks just like her. Thought I might get a look.
You mean the nut with the chainsaw?
Mm-hmm. Did you get a name on her yet?
Nah. The boys at interrogation screwed up big time. They thought the sight of the murder weapon might shock her into spilling her guts. Only problem was they forgot to take the gas out of it, and she spilled their guts instead.
They interviewed this blonde from the beginning of the movie doing this Mae West impersonation who's covered in chains. Jay finds a number written on the pack of matches. Somebody named Mercedes, who is Michelle Bauer. He hooks up with her at the local titty bar. And she drugs him. He passes out
with Igor, the bartender. Good
right?
Lord.
Yes.
Yep.
We talk about the actor who played the bartender because I know I've seen this guy before.
Yeah.
So we get to this whole thing of ancient chainsaw worshipping cult.
Yes, the chainsaws of the gods.
Which, yeah, and he even like makes fun of his own script. He's like, because
how can you not? I mean,
it's
come
the
on,
same
seriously.
thing.
They're drinking motor oil and doing a fucking like fire show with it. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. Of course, he's making fun. If he wasn't making fun of it, I'd be worried.
They didn't have chainsaws back then. He says, "Oh, but the gods did."
The gods, the chainsaws of the gods. Yeah. And like, Gunnar Hansen is wandering around with eyeliner on, lurking in the shadows like Bela Lugosi in a fucking in some Ed Wood movie.
It's unfortunate because Gunnar, he is an iconic presence in horror movies. He's obviously the first Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but he didn't really appear in that many movies. He kind of gave up on acting because he was sick of it. He was sick of the process.
I don't think he was an actor, really. Was he? I mean, he was. He was like, wasn't he a stuntman or something? I really haven't researched him.
No,
much.
He wasn't really a stunt. No, he was like.
Because I mean, he wore the Leatherface mask. It's like casting Kane Hodder in your movie. It's like the guy who was Jason in 2 Jason movies. Like, I mean, like what is that?
Yeah, that's true. But those guys
he actually
apparently
does have
got a lot of work.
Presence.
Actually, Kane Hodder, if I'm not mistaken, he did appear in several of the movies because he's actually a good-looking guy. And so Gunnar is basically, he's kind of like, he's from like Wisconsin or Fargo like territory, if you can tell, because look at him, he's Swedish.
Yeah.
Essentially, I think he went into business with his brother doing something, but he's no longer with us. I don't think he's not.
Did he pass away?
I believe he did. At least we know that. And so we get into this great dance of the double chainsaws that Linnea does.
Oh, gosh, yes. Looking at her anorexic best. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, wow. It's just wonderful. And then there's a nice duel between her and Michelle Bauer again, and we have that fake blood.
The fake crowd noise and the aging hooker peanut gallery that was wandering, like running back and forth in the foreground while they were fighting.
Yeah.
In your hands, you hold the chainsaw of the gods. Use it wisely.
Hold on now, Sam. Sam, now, you're not still sore about that headbutt, are you? Come on, have a heart.
There's something about the movie. Did you pick up on this? That this is like a side of Hollywood. I mean, basically according to Mr. Ray, that they ran around with cameras, just shooting as much as they could, and they worked over 2 weekends, and I just love that kind of vibe where you're in Hollywood, you're doing this, and you're shooting this movie while other bigger productions are going on.
Beautiful shots of old L.A.
That's another thing. The Laserdisc, I watched it on my CRT TV, so it looked wonderful.
I watched
really
the Blu-ray.
How dark those night scenes are, because they look real to me. I mean, it seems like the way we're shooting night scenes now, they don't look like that.
See, for me, I could just turn most of these movies. Like, I could just turn the sound off and watch the old, especially if they're New York movies. Watch the old New York or New York City and stuff like that. Like, I don't even need to watch the movie. Like some of the old Larry Cohen stuff, like Q and stuff like that. I just love watching the old, looking at the stores and stuff and seeing if I remember them.
There's an
old. It's the closest thing we'll ever get to being able to go back in time, and which is like an obsession of mine. So like that's why I could sit and stare.
You were telling me about a site that you go to where you look at you look at these old pictures.
It's amazing. You can look at these old HD pictures. You just look at I could look at it for hours. Man, it's amazing. But yeah, and he got some great shots. The outside shots, the outside night shots look awesome.
So we're at the end of the movie where Linnea and Jay wind up together, and it's such a fun movie. I think it's just a fun movie. It's I don't think, the thing is, I don't think it's typical of Fred Olen Ray's work. He usually does these action movies. What he did, he wrote the script for Bulletproof, the Gary Busey movie, and then it was heavily rewritten. So he wound up dissing the writers in the credits of this movie because he was making. This is what's so awesome is that Bulletproof was a major movie with a major release. And here he
did that really get a major release?
Yeah, it did. I remember seeing ads for it on TV. I was like, Gary Busey is Bulletproof. I was like, oh my God, I got to see that. Because I love Gary Busey. Anyway.
Gosh, I didn't remember that. I
totally remembered that.
I remember the movie. I just didn't remember it having a major release.
Yeah, it had a major release. It was a major studio release.
Was that who did that? I gotta look it up.
Oh God, what's his name? Carver? Somebody named Carver.
Steve Carver?
Might be Steve Carver.
Hang on, I'm gonna look it up.
Check it out.
Check it out.
Well, shit, Sheriff. I'd hate to see that happen, so I guess I'll take over your investigation.
So, I mean, how cool is it that you're working on a major movie and then you're working on another smaller movie? I think it was called Moon Scorpion or something. He was working on, and he was borrowing equipment from that production to make this movie. I mean, that is a filmmaker, man.
Let me, I want to ask a little bit about Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first off, you have this great, goofy premise. What I've always enjoyed about your work is that you don't care what people think, what critics have to say. It doesn't matter to you. You just want to have fun as a filmmaker. This is what I'm assuming. And we have Jay Richardson, who, when you look at this movie first, and then you look at Haunting Fear next, it's really hard to connect Jay Richardson playing both those parts. Because he's like this kind of, in Hookers, he's like this stand-up. Is he a stand-up comedian in some capacity?
No, Jay's. You do see him on TV and commercials and stuff a bit. He's got that great Expedia commercial that played in the Super Bowl last year, where he's standing in the doorway of a Tibetan temple or something.
Yeah,
they flew him all the way around the world to do it. Jay was what we used to call a utility player. He could play almost anything, and he was in our Steven Seagal film we just did.
Right.
But he could play almost anything. And that movie, Hollywood Chainsaw, was his first film when he came back to the acting business after getting divorced. Mm-hmm. That was the first thing. That's the first thing he auditioned for, and it's the first film that he did. And of course, we all got on well, so we did,
a few movies together
with Jay. Yeah, so we did a lot of them. Probably more than we remember.
I usually saw him in the middle of the night on HBO or Cinemax in some erotic thing, That's how he would show up. With a bunch of other mainstream porno actors would appear in softcore movies at that time.
Yeah, so the market for the erotic thrillers and those type of films, that they took a nosedive as well. And the kind of girls that you used to see regular actresses waiting sort of to audition for these things, the market died out, and so did the talent base. And then as those things got on, the only people that you could get to do those were the adult actors. The trick there was, of course, to try to find those who could carry their lines and turn in some kind of a performance and be funny or whatever it was. There was days we did an erotic thriller with, I think, Telly Savalas and Richard Roundtree that had $1 million budget. And now you couldn't get $100,000 budget to make one of those.
I would have to say those adult actors are a lot better than a lot of current really popular actors we have these days.
Well, some of them, like Evan Stone, he had a real sense of humor, and it was kind of a goofy kind of character, and sometimes
Randy Spears also.
Yeah, Randy Spears and some of the others, and then you still have a sprinkling of girls in there who never did porn, like Beverly Lynn and Christine Wynn and Monique Parent and people like that.
Yeah.
Monique Parent goes way back to some of the shows that we did, like Masseuse, years and years ago. But she still looks great.
Yeah. First off, it says in the credits that the screenplay was drastically rewritten and improved upon by you. What was the story behind that credit?
It's a gag. We used to say, there was a time when everything that you did almost would sell and had a certain life to it, and so we had the opinion that we could do almost anything we wanted, and
you were correct.
Matter. And there was a movie that we'd all been involved in called Bulletproof with Gary Busey and Henry Silva. And the film was directed by Steve Carver, and the writer was, I think, B.J. Nelson, and he had rewritten Lee Langford, and Steve Carver had directed a film that I was contracted for, and I ended up going over to Transworld and doing Commando Squad instead. But anyway, we were all still stinging a little bit from the whole Bulletproof experience. So we decided to sort of take a little jab at Steve Carver and B.J. Nelson by giving them sort of the credit for the screenplay and then taking credit for rewriting them, which is what they'd done to us. So we put Dr. S. Carver and B.J. Nestle's or something. But it's just sort of an in-joke on our part, to just sort of, just take a little fun stab at them.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. Now, it says on the back of the Laserdisc there that you shot for 5.5 days, basically over 2 weekends. Is that how it was?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So
It was all done around a movie called Moon and Scorpio with Fred Olen and John Philip Law. There was a film that was made with the leftover money from Commando Squad, done by Gary Graver, and they didn't. There was a problem. They didn't like the movie. So they asked me to supervise the reshoots, and we were going to re-kill everybody, do the murders all over again. And there was X amount of days that they were going to shoot. And in this town, it's what's called a 3-day rental. You pay 3 days of the daily rate, and then you get the cameras for the whole week. So we knew we could pick up the camera on Friday afternoon and return them a week from the following Monday. So I said I would do their show if I could have the camera gear and use of their offices for Saturday, Sunday, the first weekend, and then I would go to a studio the following weekend, and from Monday to Friday, we would shoot the Moon and Scorpio stuff they needed. So we picked the cameras up on Friday afternoon and went to my house near the Hollywood Bowl at the time, and we shot Friday night, which was the stuff with the guy with the baseball bat. And then we went to their offices, the Transworld Entertainment offices, TWE. We shot in their offices on Saturday, Sunday, which were all whatever the office interiors and stuff were. And then we waited a week, shot Moon and Scorpio during that week on a boat off of Marina Del Rey, and then came back the following weekend and shot at Movie Tech Studios, where we built the temple sets and the hotel rooms and things like that as a studio shoot.
So
that's when it was made.
You were working every day on two different features, one your own while you were working on another person's, and you were doing this every day. You didn't get a day off for like 2 weeks, right?
Well, we did that. I don't know if we did it before or after. We did Demon Sword and Bad Girls from Mars the same way.
I was curious about what the process was. You get the idea, you put the script together, you have a small crew, you get out there and just shoot as much as you can, and you schedule around the big shoots, major locations, and then run around and grab footage when you can, right?
Well, we put in full days. The only half day was Friday night. We just wanted to take advantage of the fact that the equipment was already in the car. So, you had the camera, you might as well shoot. So we took advantage of the Friday night sort of a half shoot just to do those scenes about the photographer. It just gave us an extra, because we were able to then make that film without paying any rental on the camera equipment because it was all covered by Moon and Scorpio.
Right. Yeah.
So we had the gear, on hand already. So all we had to do.
So you had to do was pay for the stock. That's all you had to pay for.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. The whole film I think came in at $50,000, and that included an answer print. The answer print was $10,000. So the whole film was probably shot and edited and scored and mixed for $40,000 in 35 millimeters. So
that
included flying gun hands out. Yeah.
That is absolutely astounding. You can't really do that these days, unfortunately.
No, but it's cheaper now. Actually, certain things are cheaper. Digital is much cheaper than
digital.
Film,
yeah.
No processing.
But can I ask your opinion as a filmmaker? Do you prefer digital or film?
Well, I was very much against it in the early going when we did Final Examination, which was one of the last 35 features with Albert Pune. He was promoting everybody to shoot these in HD, and I was totally against it. I didn't understand it very much, but I knew it was a video camera of some sort, and so I was totally against it. And there were two films there made back-to-back, Final Examination, and one called Bad Business. And Bad Business, they did, in fact, shoot it on HD. But, it came along, and we finally started using it. And And now it's kind of the standard. I've kind of just forgotten or stopped
It
thinking
actually
about
has.
it. Yeah, no, I don't mind it now. It's just the way it is. I mean, you know, we've done other 35 shows, but there have been few and far between in the last few years.
It's
For
just
a long time, Sci-Fi Channel wouldn't accept anything if it wasn't shot on 35.
Right.
So, you know, we did Ice Fighters. We did that in 35. And we did, you know, Deadly Shift and Solar Flare. Those were all 35 millimeter shows. Nuclear Hurricane was in 35 millimeter. And then finally, the very first HD show we were ever involved in that HBO said or Sci-Fi said they would accept as HD was a movie called Jersey Shore Shark Attack.
I've heard of that one.
We did that in HD, and the door's been open to HD at Sci-Fi ever since. Super Shark, Sea Snakes, they were all done in HD.
Yes, I've noticed this. That what was originally, it was kind of film snobbery, if you will, but I prefer the look of film myself. I am absolutely in love with Linnea Quigley in this movie, and most movies I see. I think she's just absolutely wonderful. She's cute as a button. And also Michelle Bauer as well. I love her. I wanted to ask, how difficult was it to block not only Linnea's dance with the double chainsaws, but the final duel with Linnea and Michelle Bauer? This looks extremely dangerous. Why would you put these beautiful ladies in such danger?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think there was only a few times in the whole show where they actually had a chainsaw with a real saw on it. I think there's a couple times, I think, where the saw comes down in front of Jay Richardson and the blade stops. And you can see, for the most part, we just took the chains off and they took a frayed rope that had a lot of fibers, and they put a frayed rope on the blade, and the vibration of the blade made these fibers on the rope blurry, so you couldn't really see. Otherwise, you could never touch two chainsaws that were running together. It was kind of scary because all you got to do is drop that thing and touch your leg or something with it, and you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And you can imagine. I mean, there wasn't probably too much time spent blocking it because the film was just made so quickly. You know, I think the biggest danger was in an enclosed space was the amount of exhaust that these things were putting out. You know, it could get quite heady at times, you know, with all the smoke coming out of those things.
That's why it fooled me, because I thought those things were running all the time. I mean, the sound
that would have been a little risky. I wouldn't put them into that. I wouldn't put them in a situation like that.
And the smoke the smoke was bellowing out, and it looks real. It looks totally real.
Yeah, no, the exhaust was all real. Every time she revved it, you know, it would just spew out all that smoke and stuff. I think she was a little high by the time it was all over.
How were they?
It worked pretty quickly.
How were Linnea and Michelle Bauer to work with?
Well, Michelle's like one of my best pals, and I just heard from her today. We were trying to set up to have lunch together, and her and I've been friends ever since we met on the Tomb all those years ago. Linnea only worked for me the one time.
Right.
Yeah, the Tomb,
I remember the Tomb. You cannot find it anywhere. I can't seem to find it anywhere.
Yeah, well, that's an MGM film, but they did transfer it to HD, and it has played on Showtime and stuff, and Netflix even, in a widescreen version. It's a very nice version.
When
I first got Netflix, it was being played on there. And this was the only time I ever worked with Linnea. She just wasn't right for other things that we did, you know, and she moves around a lot, and so she's not local. Which, out of sight, out of mind. Is that kind of thing. But she was perfect. She was perfect for this. She had some cachet at the time, and Michelle didn't really. And we just used Michelle because she was just so talented, and she was just so much fun to work with. And I always thought Michelle was the best actress out of all of us.
She is wonderful.
I thought she had the best comedic timing, and I probably used her more than any other actress in anything that I've done. I mean, if you tally up all the times
I'm looking at another VHS here that I didn't. Okay, this was. I worked. You're gonna love this. I worked at Blockbuster Video for a few years, and I even was a manager. And I met my wife there, actually. As a matter of fact, she was an employee. But what they did was they sold a copy of Phantom Empire here, and I bought it. I think it was a previously viewed tape or something that they were trying to get rid of, and I grabbed it right away. It's just a great movie. I love it. You got Sybil Danning on the cover with this robot. There's a striking resemblance to the robot from Forbidden Planet, Lost in Space.
Well, it is. It is the robot from Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, okay. I can see it right here.
I asked them, they had an alternate head for it, and I asked them to change the head out so it didn't look exactly like Robbie. But it is Robbie the robot.
There's a great bit. Okay, Ross Hagen's in the movie, right? But we know Jeffrey Combs is in the movie, too. And he has been led around the entire movie by a topless Michelle Bauer. And then when he hooks up with his friends again, he's like, they're like, so you had some real problems there, and he looks at her and he goes, yeah, it was terrible, awful. I just love that line. It always makes me crack up. Now you've talked in other interviews, and you've also talked in books about how much horror films inspired you. You like to go to horror films because your parents didn't want you to go. But when I look at Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, I see noir. It's just flat out film noir, like Maltese Falcon, T-Men. The dialogue and the acting are evocative of film noir. I don't know that you ever talked about that influence or inspiration. How much of film noir inspired your work?
Well, that was just sort of, when you go to simply write something out, you just have to try to figure out what your film's about. And I liked Raymond Chandler and the Dashiell Hammett stuff, and we simply thought that, Jay had the right look, and that if he could, narrate sort of a little bit of the film, it would make it simpler to understand a bigger story than we were able to actually tell visually.
Right.
And he did a great job. I mean, I don't know how many times in my life I've ever done a film where you could hear what people are thinking. I know I've done it a few times. Mm-hmm. But it's a device, and I thought it gave the film something more than what maybe another filmmaker given the same title would have maybe done. It's just, like I said, it's just kind of a personal stamp that I wanted to put
very
on
few
things.
filmmakers
And I do that a lot with my films.
Right.
And a lot of those early films have sort of hidden messages. That one, the message isn't really very hidden. It's a message film. I laugh. People laugh when I say that. It is a film with a message, and it just kind of goes back to when my brother and I first moved to Los Angeles. We were from Florida, and we were fairly naive. And we were walking down the street in Hollywood, and we kept seeing these newspapers that were full of ads of girls who were masseuses or escorts, and they were all willing to come to your house. And I said to my brother, who in their right mind would call somebody from one of these ads and let this person come to your house? Because I said you would never tell your neighbors or your friends that you're doing this. I said, you have no idea that this isn't going to be some chainsaw-wielding maniac that's coming over there to kill you. I said, this is a terrible idea. So when we did Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, that's just what it was all about. It was about people, who were very careless with who they'd find themselves naked with on any particular evening. And Beverly Hills Vamp was the same story, basically. It's Hollywood Chainsaws in case these girls were vampires.
Sort of, I guess, maybe kind of responding to the, the prolific attitudes of people having sex in the 80s.
Well, yeah, that and the openness of these newspapers, which are still out there, which were they weren't even thinly disguised, newspapers advertising basically prostitutes.
Yeah.
And under a guise of something else. But I was just thinking to myself how risky that could be. It's a perfect setup for someone to come over and rob you or kill you.
Yeah, that's okay. You know what we have now on the East Coast? I don't know if you guys have it over there, but the latest trend is snuggling. You go to a woman's, basically an apartment, or a man, pay $80 an hour, and you snuggle them in bed, or they snuggle you.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I have no clue what that.
We have it right over here in Queens, where I live, and it's $80 an hour, which costs that's a bit pricey. Now you have a line of dialogue here that is oddly prescient, given this time. You have Jay talking about religious freedom and immigration laws.
Yeah.
And this is no one was thinking about this stuff in 87 or 88. Now they're thinking about it constantly.
Well, you know what? It's just like that line where he said, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I don't think this building is zoned for human sacrifice.
Yeah.
You know, I just, it's just one of those. It's just one of those sort of message sort of things that find their way into strange films sometimes.
It just winds up in there.
It's just how I felt. It's how I felt at the time. I probably still feel that way.
Well, we're all talking about it now. Now it's part of the national discourse.
Yes.
Now
it is.
I want to ask you about Dookie Flyswatter. He was a bartender. Where have I seen this guy before? Because I was writing my notes up.
Michael Sonny is a writer that I met. His girlfriend was a wardrobe girl, was a costumer, and she did the wardrobe. And he had a band called Haunted Garage, and they've got some records and stuff out. And he was a writer who did Commando Squad and other things like that. And he was he wanted to be an actor, and we used him in Star Slammer, and I think him and I are in Commando Squad and a few other different things. He was just a peculiar fellow, who
I know
who
I've
we
seen
had
him
met
before.
through.
He has a very distinctive face.
He was in Surf Nazis Must Die. I think he played Dr. Mengele.
That sounds familiar, yeah. That might have been...
That
was
might
Star
be
Slammer...
Yeah.
Was Star Slammer the
Star
one...
Slammer.
Is that the one that you worked on from an Ed Wood script?
No, we shot some of that script on the Star Slammer sets before we tore them down. We were really, at the time, we were really big about capitalizing on a big set that somebody had built. We would run in this case it was our own set, but before we moved on, we would run in and shoot something on the idea that maybe a movie would be made of it later. And there's a bunch of fragments of things that we filmed on different sets and stuff that we had constructed, so we just didn't want to tear them down. And that was one of the things. We shot a bit of the Ed Wood stuff on the Star Slammer sets, like on either our day off or the day after we wrapped or something.
You are now listening to Extreme Cinema with Andrew LeGanc and David Lawler.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
What do we got?
Victoria is a very frightened woman.
Dreams. Dreams that won't let me sleep. Nightmares. Most of the time, I'm being buried alive.
Her husband is a very frightened man.
Mr. Visconti, I know I'm into you for a lot of money here, but I'm afraid I'm going to need a little more time, see?
And time is something that neither of them have.
I think I have another solution to this problem. There are only a few options left, some of them very unpleasant.
Victoria's dreams are about to come true.
God, Terry, why are you doing this?
You see, your husband's run up some serious debts, and he needs some serious cash. With you dead, we can mortgage your house and live happily ever after, just like in the storybooks.
Poe's bestseller, A New Experience in Horror, Haunting Fear.
Haunting Fear, which is from 1990, it's a completely different movie than Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers because it's an attempt to be serious. And I guess based on my discussion with Fred Olen Ray, he really did want to do something serious. He said he didn't really have much of a script finished. He was just working on something like in between gigs, and he was always constantly
a lot of the
working
padding because we're seeing the car like he gets in the car and then the car starts and then we see him like turn the car around and then drive up the block, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah,
but it has a great opening title, which is like the skull, and then you hear these great John Carpenter stings, piano driven.
Mm-hmm.
It's evocative and moody, and it's a really good score. And then we launch into this weird dream sequence with Brink Stevens, who looks really good. She's really made up, and
she's pretty hot in this.
Yeah. She reminds me a lot of like an actress that I worked with last year on one of my films. Her name is Sarah. Very beautiful woman.
Cast her a couple more times.
I'd love to deck her out like that, especially with a knife in her hand covered in blood. But she looks great. Just wonderful. She opens up this door. There's a smoke coming out. She's heading toward a coffin. She opens up the coffin, sees her dead father there, and then he pulls one of these, I guess, Brian De Palma moves and just grabs her. He's like,
Yeah.
And then she freaks out, wakes up, and she is like in the kitchen, I guess, pouring herself coffee. She's drinking. She doesn't want to go to bed or something like that. So, and then we go to Jan Michael Vincent, who spends most of this movie just smoking and drinking in the driver's seat of this really nice white Mustang. And
art imitates life.
Yeah. And he wanted, I guess the situation before we figure it out, just to spoil a little bit of it, is that he's like,
don't spoil it.
He's like a shakedown dude for this, I guess, mobbed up kind of guy.
Yeah, the guy that Richardson owes money to.
Yeah, because Jay Richardson, who plays Brink's husband, has a gambling habit or something. She doesn't want to go to sleep. There's all these sound effects. You got the coffee maker, the clock on the wall. And if Jay Richardson is her husband, he's a bastard. You just know it. He's got this look. He's got this look of a douchebag throughout the whole thing.
Look, I have trouble getting him out of my head from Hollywood Chainsaw.
I know, yeah, it's a weird 1-2 punch.
Difficult. Yeah.
You see him, he's like this. He's like comic relief. He's supposed to be fun. I think he's stronger when he's funnier. When he's playing a character like I don't buy it. I don't really buy that he, number one, could be married to Brink. Number two, that he's banging this hot British chick. Number three, that he's scheming.
She's smoking that chick.
She's crazy. She is crazy hot. She has an amazing body, which we see quite a bit of in this.
Yes, we do.
Because she got a great ass, and you got your head all the way up it.
Because there is a lot of sex in the movie, which is, this is like really fun for me because I just love this movie so much because
this is like really fun for me because I love to watch Married with Lots of Sex.
that sounds like me a little bit. Well, what I like is that you can watch a movie like this and be inspired to do something like it. It would have really worked out back in those days, but this was like the very early 90s. I was a kid. I wasn't even thinking about this stuff yet. But I picked up this movie. I think I picked up this movie in HMV for like $10, brand new, and I still have it. Still have it on VHS. Popped it in to my VCR. Watched it on my tube TV. Wonderful to see. It's very hard to find these days. So Brink falls asleep on the stairs. Meanwhile, Jay wants her to see this doctor, who coincidentally she suspects of killing her father or something. It's a very, very close family there,
or something. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Jan Michael's still in the car. He's still spying. We're not quite sure what he's looking at in the beginning, but then it turns out that we find out that he's spying on Jay. But there's I love Jan Michael Vincent. Even when he's sitting in the car, Brink comes out to get into her car to go see the doctor, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. And he sees her. She sees him, and she just waves at him, right? And he waves. He's like waving, and he's like, "Oh shit! Why did I just wave at her?"
Bastardo.
Like, oh God, why did I wave? Oh wait, should I have waved? And then she gets into the car, unlocks the door, gets in the car, turns the car on, and then turns the car around, and then drives off, and then we can move on with the movie.
Yeah.
Don't waste my motherfucking time.
And where do we go? We go into, I guess, from behind style sex with Delia Shepard, the hot blonde British chick.
How else are you going to do it there?
Yeah, in his office, I guess. Yeah. She's like his secretary, right? This is what I'm assuming.
She's his secretary, and so yeah.
And he has, meanwhile, I mean, he's kind of an idiot anyway, because he has Brink at home, and he's plowing this one, which is...
I think I might have gone for the one at the office, too.
Delia Shepard, the only other role she had of note was playing Tommy Morrison's manager in Rocky V. But, it's interesting because she's tall, she's statuesque, and she's blonde, very much that kind of Bridget Nielsen, except I think she's really much hotter than Bridget.
No, she's way less manly than Bridget Nielsen.
Yeah. Brink sees the doctor. They talk. She's nervous. I guess he gives her some pills or something. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, he gives her some medication to, we don't know what that is. But, yeah, he gives her some medication.
Sedative?
And then we launch into this weird kind of a dream sequence. It goes on for a good amount of time. Actually, you actually
think that that's what actually happened in the movie, and then they wake you up
in her sleep. It looks like she's dead. She appears to be dead, but she's still communicating in some form, maybe psychically or something like that. But we can hear her. And then we have this scene with Michael Berryman playing like a mortician or something. He's about to slice her open or embalm her or something while she's still alive. And just as he's about to do it, she wakes up. But in her dream, she suspects that Jay is actually cheating on her anyway with this girl, with this other girl. So she's not really, she's not as dumb as she's being written to be. Because in her mind, this doctor's trying to kill her. Jay wants her dead. Jay wants to run off with Delia Shepard, and he has this. There's a great.
She already knows what's happening in this movie before we do.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah.
Yeah.
He says something in her dream. He says, "I gotta act sad and all that shit," which I thought was a funny line. So the doctor takes one look at her and says, "Massive heart failure." The greatest doctor in the universe apparently can just look at you and make a diagnosis. He beats the crap out of House.
It's obviously massive heart failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It couldn't be anything else.
I mean, geez, didn't you go to medical school?
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
She wakes up again, so the whole thing was a dream. So I'm pretty sure that it was produced independently. It was financed independently.
Right.
I believe that Fred Olen Ray financed it himself, which is kind of like how he does it. He's not... I guess he's, like he said, he's not one of these film school guys who searches for funding, because if that's all you think you can do to be a filmmaker is just look for financing, you're not going to make any films. You have to actually, you kind of have to do like what the Coen brothers did. You remember the Coen brothers, how they actually got on the map?
Blood Simple.
Yeah, it was, what it was they got like a couple of people who worked on the crew of Evil Dead. They got like Bruce Campbell. They got Barry Sonnenfeld. And they shot a trailer. They shot basically a 2-minute trailer and made it look really professional, and then they showed it to a bunch of people who, ultimately invested in it, and that's how they did it.
Right, and that model was used countless times.
Yeah, it was a lot back then. You could actually do that. Nowadays, they don't really do that so much because there's very little market now for smaller movies. Studios by themselves are not financing these movies anymore. Now it seems to be a consortium of 5 or 6 different production companies, and then the studio comes in, meets you halfway by distribution.
Oh God, yeah, you got like 83 different companies financing every single movie.
Yeah, that's why you get so many vanity cards at the beginning of these movies. It's like 5 or 6 different production companies, right?
Yeah, and then you end up with crap like the new Ghostbusters.
God, you want to get into that?
This man has no dick.
You might as well talk about that shit too. This is a ghost story.
But that's a show of its own,
But what this is was financed by Fred Olen Ray, and then I guess Troma for some reason picked up the video rights, which is probably why the cassette was so cheap. This guy is amazing to me because he keeps working and he's never lost a dime. That's what I love about it.
God bless him. God bless him.
And he does all these crazy movies for sci-fi, like these Sharknado type movies, that kind of stuff. I was interested in Fred Olen Ray's work from a long time ago because I saw a documentary about Ed Wood, and one of the first projects that Fred Olen Ray worked on was a script that Ed Wood was writing. Ed Wood wrote a script for him, but unfortunately Ed Wood died. He was never able to finish the movie, so instead he does the old Corman gag, which is to take the sets that he built for that movie and just write a new script and use those sets.
Right.
So that's how I had first heard of Fred Olen Ray, basically. And then I picked up a couple of his movies. And I was watching them, and I was like, my God, this is just wonderful. And Haunting Fear is a movie that I really love because it's Edgar Allan Poe, and like I said, Poe is very, very difficult to translate. He doesn't really write a story per se. He writes more of like an anecdote or something like that.
Yeah, my opinion is people shouldn't do it. That's,
yeah, and I did it.
I know you did.
I made a movie.
My opinion remains the same.
And it got distribution, if I might add. My movie,
Yes.
Regia. So like I said, we have two stars in this movie. We have Jan Michael Vincent, and we have Karen Black. She's some kind of a crazy hypnotist. For some reason, they call her over. They have her hypnotize Brink, and she's in it for like 5 minutes, and then disappears.
What I want to do, Victoria, is to relax you. Relax you to the farthest state that you can go. I want your mind free from all thought, from worries, from fear. Do you think that you can do that for me?
I can try. Then what?
Then sleep. Very peaceful sleep. A sleep without dreams, without nightmares. You'd like that, wouldn't you?
Oh, yes, very much. Very much.
Then let's try it. Feel the sleep in your fingertips. Close your eyes and feel the sleep move upwards through your arms to your head.
It was like
It's an unusual walk-on bit for her. But I guess she wasn't getting any work at the time, because he did tell me that he was able to cast these people because they weren't being cast.
Right.
And if they weren't being cast, their asking prices got lower and lower.
Right.
So he could secure a Karen Black for one day and a Jan Michael Vincent for one day.
He's like, think how much I could get, Buddy Ebsen for. Like,
Buddy
whoa.
Ebsen,
Then he's dead. Dig him up. He's even cheaper.
And it's really interesting to me because Karen Black, she got a Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress for her work in 5 Easy Pieces. And here she is in this very, very small little movie.
She is an easy piece right here.
That's very good. Thank you.
No problem.
So, meanwhile, we go back to Jan Michael Vincent. He's been sitting in his Mustang for weeks. He gets out of the car. And finally, he's going to talk to her. So he pretends to be a cop, and he's
sitting in that old Mustang. My bad. I'm sorry. I forgot. Yes.
Yeah.
That nice one. That really nice, like 70, like early 70s Mustang.
He finally talks to Brink. He pretends he's a cop, and he's like trying to dig up a little information. And great scenes between them, as well as this the scene at the end, which we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Can I help you?
Lieutenant James Trent, Metro.
Is there a problem?
Maybe. You mind if we talk inside? It's quite a place.
Could you please tell me what's wrong?
Well, Mrs. Monroe,
How do you know my name?
Excuse me, please. We've had some reports of screaming here at night.
I had a bad dream.
The reports said it happened more than once. Maybe your neighbors.
Well, okay, I've had more than a few nightmares.
No problem. We were just maybe concerned that you were being abused. Spouse abuse is not uncommon even among the best of families.
I can assure you, Mr. Trent, that is not the case.
It's my job to check these things out.
Thanks for your concern, but
This is quite a place you've got here.
my father left it to me.
You mind if I have a look around? Old house is really fascinating.
No, I guess it wouldn't hurt.
But I suspect, based on the conversation, that he had a very short little script, so he had to pad it out with a lot of those slow tracking shots and all that stuff, just to get up to a feature length running time.
Right.
because another project had fallen through, I think.
Oh, okay.
But the one thing I notice here is that each character is an archetype. You have like a representative of a certain kind of person. You have this innocent girl, you have a slut, you have a bastard, you have an authority figure, you have a cop, you have Michael Berryman, whoever the hell that was.
Get rid of all of them and just keep the slut. That's what I say.
But I was thinking about this as I was editing these episodes. I must protest a little at your griping about Q, where you were complaining about all the character development. Character development is crucial, my gentle snowflake. It's necessary that we understand these people before we get involved in their lives. That's how you tell a story. End of speech.
Okay, I like character development, but too much of it for no reason is pointless and annoying. Okay, that was my problem with Q.
But I felt like we didn't have enough to go on with Jay or with Delia Shepard. I felt like we were just fine with Brink, and we were great with Jan Michael Vincent, and hell, even Karen Black. But with those two, with the bastard and the slut, I felt like there wasn't enough. I understand the movie's about Brink. Give me a little bit more of those two, a little bit of their motivation, because I don't understand. They're just like evil for no reason.
Well, sometimes people don't write these things in the script because they can't figure it out themselves.
Or it could be just kind of weak performances. Maybe, like I said, Jan, I know next to nothing about Jan's character, but I'm totally with him in this movie.
Yeah, I'm with Jan, too. I'm with Jan and the whorish chick that works in the office.
I'm not with her because I just don't understand why she's so horrible. But
the only reason, I'd be with her, except I'd be afraid I'd get a disease.
I was wondering. I didn't. The one question I wasn't able to ask, and I forgot, was that I wanted to know where the exteriors were shot, because it didn't look quite like Los Angeles. It looked like it was maybe West Los Angeles, because the foliage is it's a very lush dark green. So I was thinking it's got to be a little bit north of LA, like maybe Brentwood or Westwood or something.
I don't see colors very well. It all looks the goddamn same to me. So it could be
well, it was green. It was a very lush.
It was LA.
Green. Well, it seemed to be.
It all looked the same shade of shithole to me.
I assumed it looked like a middle class neighborhood. It didn't even look like a upper middle class neighborhood or a rich neighborhood. It just looked like plain, kind of middle class neighborhood. So I was assuming it was probably not Brentwood, but west of it, Westwood. All right, let's get into the good stuff here. This is when it really, really kicks into gear, this movie. Basically, what they do... Now, I'm assuming here that Jay and Delia drug Brink, they put her to sleep, and then the plan is to put her in this cheap-looking coffin or case, not even something that looks like it's built very well. And they make her think that they've buried her alive, and hopefully, I guess she'll have a heart attack. This is like their plan or something. They put her in this thing. They put dirt over it to I guess, create the illusion that they're burying her alive. And they put her in the basement, and I guess there are rats there, too, which is not that great.
Yeah, that's probably not the best idea.
So it's time for some more explicit softcore sex while Jan sits in this car and smokes.
Yes.
This is a pretty hot scene. There's lots of slapping and smacking and sweating, and they're really into rough stuff, Meanwhile, Brink is going mad in the coffin, which I have to assume here is that she has died and has finally gone insane. And she looks great. She comes out of the coffin.
But at least she looks great, right?
She looks wonderful. I love her.
Yeah.
She sets out for revenge, and I love them. And basically they think that she's gotten out or something. Delia flips out. They're putting their clothes on. They're like, they're not a very nice couple, and I don't think they should probably be a couple anyway, but that's not going to matter in a minute.
No.
So Jay goes down the stairs. He's like, I want to help you, baby. Everything's going to be okay. And then she comes out of nowhere, stabs him through the back of his neck in this kind of effect that, actually, when I saw it, it made me jump the first time. But looking at it now with the way, makeup effects are done, it looks kind of silly. Delia's in the kitchen, and suddenly Jay's head rolls into the kitchen. She, of course, flips out. Brink chases her with a knife, which is great. I love it. It actually reminds me of Evil Dead a lot, the way it's sort of staged. And this is the shot where Fred Olen Ray said that this is the shot he had in his head when he was thinking about making the movie, was Brink chasing Delia out of the house and then stabbing her to death on the lawn. Meanwhile, Jan Michael Vincent's still in the car going, "Oh, what the fuck?" He's like, "Well, that's funny. That crazy-looking broad is stabbing that other broad. What's going on here? I think I'll get out of the car because this is weird." She goes back into the house. I guess Delia's dead. She's on the lawn. She's dead. Jan Michael Vincent. I'm rooting for Brink here. I really am because, Jay and Delia are horrible, horrible people. They deserve to die.
I'm rooting for Jan Michael Vincent.
Well, Jan comes in, sees this fucked up shit. He shoots her, which is kind of sad because when you think about it, Brink is really kind of a victim in this whole thing.
Yes.
And then she stabs Jan a couple of times. He's got some blood or whatever. And she runs off, and Jan sympathizes with her, and that's great. This is really just good. This ending is awesome because he comes into the kitchen. Well, he calls the cops. He phones it in. He's like, we got 2 dead bodies over here. Bring some cars over and all that stuff. He goes into the kitchen, and Brink is just sitting on the floor with a knife, and she's glaring up at him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if I asked you this question before, but why are there 2 refrigerators in the kitchen? Would you know? You're a homeowner.
I don't know the answer to that question. Yes, I am a homeowner, and I only have one in mine. Now, I do have an extra one in my garage. Maybe they don't have a garage.
That's possible.
So they need a place to keep beer.
Okay, for the beer. Or maybe kosher. Maybe one refrigerator is kosher.
There's one for meat and one for cheese.
There you go. All right, well, we solved that problem. The cops come in, I guess, and he's like, "Hey, put your guns away." I really wouldn't tell them to put their guns away, not with a crazy woman covered in blood caressing a knife. But he turns around, and then he turns back, and guess what? Boom! She's gone, and only the knife remains. I thought that was a great ending. The great look on Jan Michael Vincent's face. There's just something about this that is so right for me. I know you probably have issues with it. But
it's not what I wanted from this movie. It's just not. It's a little more. If you're going to be serious, I think it needed to hit the mark a little bit better than it did. And I think it's outside of Fred Olen Ray's comfort zone. And I not that I criticize him for going out of his comfort zone.
It's not quite his wheelhouse. Maybe.
Yeah.
Is it possible that there's some stuff in there that's a little too tongue-in-cheek for the material involved, like tongue-in-cheek in a
Jay
kind
Richardson?
of Hollywood chainsaw hooker's way.
Yeah.
Where there are little bits where you forget for a second that this is a serious movie.
Yeah,
like some of the dialogue
problem
between Jay and Delia is just kind of silly.
There are some tone issues in that regard that don't help to keep it serious. It doesn't. And Jay Richardson's presence in general it's
off-putting.
His whole persona is kind of like he should be Zucker Abrams Zucker should have looked at him to like put him in stuff.
Yes, agreed completely.
He's got that whole.
Well, that's what he winds
Nielsen
up doing. Thing. I mean, when he's working subsequently on Fred Olen Ray's movies, he's doing that kind of stuff. He's doing humor. He's not doing the straight bastard type.
Right. So that was kind of wrong for him, and that sort of I think really that casting set the stage for some of the other things that aren't right with it. And then you've also got a maybe the script should have been fleshed out a little bit better in order rather than padding it out with showing scenes of the cars turning around and people starting their cars and stuff. We maybe add a couple of scenes to the script.
Yeah. I agree with you on that, but
that doesn't cost anything.
Some of you can get a really good indication of screen presence when you take a guy like Jan Michael Vincent and put him next to a guy like Jay Richardson. You see one guy has enormous screen presence; he doesn't have to do anything, and then the other guy,
he really does, doesn't he? Like that was what he
really knows how to navigate a shot.
In this was Jan Michael Vincent's screen presence. It just jumps out at you, and you're looking at it. And it was while I watched this, I actually paused the movie and I honestly thought that Jan Michael Vincent was dead. I thought he died in the 90s. I don't know why, but
right.
It was during the middle of this movie, or I guess it was towards the end. I paused it and I was just like, let me go back and look at Jan Michael Vincent, because I was thinking about Hit List, the Lustig movie. That he did, and it wasn't much longer after this that he did it. Maybe a year, maybe a year or two. He was an amazing actor, absolutely amazing, and amazing screen presence.
Yeah.
And you can see it 100% in this movie.
I want to move on to Haunting Fear, which is my favorite. I think my favorite of your work. It's a movie that deeply inspired me too. I made a couple of movies based on Edgar Allan Poe stories, Telltale Heart and Ligeia. I think you can find Ligeia somewhere if you go looking for it. But I want to talk a little bit about Brinke Stevens. I absolutely love her. I think she's wonderful. What can you tell us about how you hooked up with her, made this movie with her?
Well, she was an actress I was aware of, and when I was doing Warlords with David Carradine, they had hired a girl who was, I believe she was the daughter of Peter Sellers and Britt Eklund. Her name was Victoria Sellers, and she was a girl with a troubled history, and eventually some drug dealers or something cut off one of her fingers.
Oh wow!
But they wanted to put her in there, Victoria Sellers, and we brought her out on the very first day, and you see her in the back seat of the car that's being chased at the beginning. But when she got out, she couldn't act. She couldn't speak. I mean, it was. And then they watched the dailies, and everybody said, "Oh my God, we can't go forward with her in this role," because it was David Carradine's wife in the film who he's searching for the whole film. Right. And I said, I know this brunette. I said, why don't we take a look at her and see if you guys like her? And I called Brinke, and they saw her and they liked her, and so they brought her in to play David Carradine's wife in this movie. And shortly after that, I started dating her.
Okay.
And you can almost always tell who my girlfriends are by who's starring in those low-budget horror films I used to make.
Oh.
And so we Bad Girls from Mars together, and Spirits, and Haunting Fear, and then Mob Boss, and I think after Mob Boss, I think I was on to someone else. Although I'm still friends with Brinke, and I see her frequently. But that's how I managed to hook up with that. And it was originally, I had a script called Empire of the Rats. It was an H.G. Wells sort of thing. I had a rat suit, and I had Jan Michael Vincent lined up, and I had the whole crew and everything. And then the script came in, and I just didn't like it. I couldn't film it. I didn't think it was worth shooting. I was having breakfast with Bob Corey one morning, and Bob said, "Fred, surely you've got something at home that you've been working on that you can spin this around." And I went back, and I had 20 pages of this Edgar Allan Poe thing. And I thought, I can finish this. And so I sat down and I finished the script, and I put it in place of Empire of the Rats, and I shot it instead. I used Jan, and Bob's in it, and Karen Black, you know the film. So
right.
I made it in 6 days for $140,000, Screen Actors Guild, and 35 millimeter. And it did great. It did great business. I think we tripled our money on that film.
It's still a movie I absolutely love. I want to see it on DVD or Blu-ray. I really do.
Well, when the rights come back to me, or maybe I can license. I own the foreign rights. I might license it to the UK and then import some copies here. I have the negative, obviously.
Great. And that sounds wonderful.
Negative, so. It will eventually surface. And that was I talked to Brinke. I saw her a week ago, and we were talking about that film. And I said, that's one of the shortest scripts that I ever attempted to make a feature film out of. It was 70-some pages. I said, but what it did, at the time, I had theorized, because usually on a 6-day movie, you are rushing to try to get all the pages done every day. Everything's a hurry. I said, if I had less pages, maybe I would have more time to develop the scenes more fully, than just rushing through them. And so what you see in Haunting Fear are all these tracking dolly shots, slow, moody, push ends and stuff like that we never could afford to do on a 6-day movie.
Right.
But because we had a lower page count, we were able to do it, and it made the film longer, and so it still came out at 80-some odd minutes. So it was one of my favorites. I enjoyed it. I'd never shot a scene. There's a sort of a sex scene with this girl, Delia Shepard, and Jay Richardson.
She's very beautiful, very beautiful.
It was
woman.
it was a great scene, and now, like 3 months after this, I get a telephone call, and it's like they said Sylvester Stallone would like to have a VHS of Haunting Fear because he was dating Delia Shepard. You know, she's in one of the Rocky movies, right? She played played Tommy Morrison's manager in that one Rocky movie.
Rocky V, right?
Right. So Stallone's hooked up with Delia, and he wants to see that sex scene. And I said, okay. I said, I'll give you a screener VHS because it hadn't been released yet. I said, but what are you guys going to do for me? Well, Sly will send you an autographed photo. and this was one of his editors, the editor of whatever movie that was at the time. And I said to the guy, I said, okay, Bob, you know, send somebody over. And they came over, and I said, where's the photo? Oh, we'll send it to you. Well, I never got the photo. And so, like, a year later, talking to Bob, the editor, I said, you know, Bob, I gave you guys that VHS, which they said that Sly wore out. He wore it out playing that.
Oh,
and
wow.
I said, I never got that photo you guys promised me for that. That's not a big deal. But, I mean, it's you know, you come over and you take this thing, it's pre-released. And the guy said, well, I don't work for Sly anymore. He goes, I work for Steven Seagal. And he said, Steven Seagal sent me an autographed photo in place of Sly.
Oh, my goodness.
In exchange for the Haunting Fear.
I'm so tempted to break out my Sylvester Stallone impersonation. I just wanted to do it.
Well, you know, what's his? Chuck Serino did the score for Haunting Fear. I thought he did a tremendous job.
The music in the movie is so... I have it in my head. Listening to it right now, you know what it reminds me a little of John Carpenter. It has like a John Carpenter feel to it, and it's very evocative and moody.
Yeah, it is, and like I said, we had these long extended dolly shots and stuff, and the music kind of held it all together. I was very pleased with the end result on that.
Now, okay, now I'm going to ask you just one of these pretentious filmmaker questions. There's usually an image in your head when you're thinking about an image that has to wind up in that film. And I'm thinking the strongest image in that movie is right toward the end when Jan Michael Vincent comes into the kitchen and he sees Brink Stevens sitting in the corner with a knife, kind of glaring up at him. And I wonder, did you see that in your head?
No, that was a trip to Trilogy of Terror, the Karen Black movie where she's possessed by the Zuni doll. The image that's in that film that I really saw and executed the way I wanted it was where Delia comes running out of the house and Brink is running behind her and Delia falls and Brink jumps down on her and starts stabbing her out of frame. That was the one shot that in the film that I was very hot on. That and the one where she broke out of her coffin and her hands are all bloody from clawing at the lid and her fingers are coming through the wood and she kind of comes climbing out of the coffin.
Oh, okay.
The other one was a cop on the Zuni Warrior doll ending where Karen Black's possessed by the doll. It was just meant to be. I mean, sometimes you just go, well, how are you going to get out of this? You know, how are you going to get out of this movie? And I thought, well, we'll have an open window with the curtains blowing, and she got away.
It was just wonderful.
Gets away at the end of the movie.
It's wonderful, and it's kind of a sad movie, really, because Brink is completely innocent, but when she has these kind of hallucinations in the extended dream sequence, she obviously has in the back of her head the idea that her husband's screwing around on her, and she's driven mad. And what does she do? I mean, this is what she does.
Well, people laughed about this movie, but there's a book on Edgar Allan Poe films. It's a hardback book on Poe films, and it said in that book that this movie was probably one of the most truest to Edgar Allan Poe. Because in the Poe premature burial, the person only believes they're buried alive. They're not really buried alive. And that was, of course, the thrust of this film, is that they only believed she was buried alive. So it wasn't, it was at a time when these Poe films were making a resurgence. Roger was making a couple, and this guy was making a couple. And I thought, let me get in on this, you know. And I
right,
did
Wynorski,
well.
Wynorski made
yeah,
Morella,
Wynorski,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. So very quickly, I know you're running out of time. I just want to now, Jan Michael Vincent. He's basically. I really like him. I love Jan Michael Vincent. I think he's wonderful. Always been one of my favorite actors. He appears for the most part sitting in a car smoking and drinking until he actually finally comes out and talks to Brink, and he misrepresents himself as a cop. He's not a cop. He's like doing shakedown work for a loan shark that I guess Jay Richardson owes money to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah, it's got to be about something. That's what I always say. Every movie has to be about something.
Absolutely.
It's got to be a story. Well, I shot Jan's entire role in a single day.
Yeah.
You know, so the trick was for how to get him throughout the film and you know, getting done in a day. Because we were at a house with a swimming pool. I think he meets Bob Corey.
Right.
And then he has that whole bit, you know, where he's walking the car. That allowed me to shoot a lot of footage of him in a hurry. And then of course, you know, he comes in to check things out at the finale. So it was a one-day part, and we were just simply trying to make it look like he was in it more than he was.
Well, did you ever think that maybe you could have expanded his part a little bit more, because he had some really good chemistry with Brink, and I always thought those two should get together, not her and Jay. I hated Jay in this movie.
You know, she lets him live. The thing with Jan at the time is he was basically just kind of out of rehab. He was, you know, he wasn't easy. He wasn't a difficult person. It just was hard to get anything out of him. And you kind of feel lucky that you got what you got. I mean, we did one other movie with him, because he worked 2 days. Mm-hmm. And when you work with Jan at that point, as you know, things went downhill after that. But when you worked with Jan at that point, you didn't know which Jan was going to show up. He wasn't really reliable, and you know, lines came hard to him. And, you know, it was one of those things where he was at a point in his career where a movie like Haunting Fear could make him an offer and he'd accept it. And so for us, it was a coup. You know, we've said, okay, we're lucky. We got lucky here. You know, we've got Jan at a point where he still meant something, but he was at a point in his career where nobody else wanted to hire him.
Right.
So it worked out. It worked out really well. And on a 6-day movie, you can't have an actor who holds up the show. And that's kind of the actor that he was. I mean, you've got to go on 6 days. You cannot sit there and mollycoddle people and wait for them to get out of the trailer and wait for them to stumble around and try to remember the one line. I mean, you can't do it. It's counterproductive.
But I thought he was absolutely wonderful. I love watching him.
I was thrilled. I was delighted to have him. I was delighted to be the owner of that film. I financed a lot of these films myself, and you know, when you finish your own money in there and you nail down an actor of that caliber at that point, you kind of go, okay, this is an insurance policy that my little film will get out there somehow. Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of actors like that where you try to catch somebody at a point where you can afford them and they'll do your show, and they bring something to the film and it elevates your movie to a secondary level that another film that's competing with you may not have that.
That's what I've always admired
I would pay,
about.
like on $140,000, I'd pay Robert Vaughn. I'd pay Robert Vaughn $20,000.
Robert Vaughn.
You know, to do Witch Academy. And, you know, and then you try to pull a second name so it doesn't look like to people like, well, you had a cheap movie and you paid for one guy. So I always try to find a second person, like Karen Black or Priscilla Barnes, to be in the same movie so that it's not just one person. You have 2 people who have some name value, and the other person's maybe $1,000 a day player. You know, it was all, you know, it's all calculated to stay in business, which is what I've done. I've managed to stay in business where other people have fallen by the wayside. And it's because I'm trying to use some kind of business acumen and not just do what I want, but I'm trying to do what I think other people would want.
And this is what I've always admired about guys like you and David Pryor and Albert Pugh and people like that. You hire these people and you give them a livelihood. You give them work. And when other more mainstream sources turn their back on them, and I've always appreciated that.
Well, you know what? I grew up at the drive-in, and if I saw people in the drive-in and I enjoyed their movies, I would use whatever power I had on my films to populate my movies with people who I wanted to spend the day with. the Aldo Rays and the John Carradines and the Cameron Mitchells and the Ross Hagans and the Sid Haigs and the Russ Tamblyn and all those, Robert Corey, all those people who became friends of mine. These are all people that I brought out of retirement, a lot of them, and put them back on the screen again because they had entertained me when I was younger, and I wanted to hang out, and I wanted my films to become part of their history. When you look at John Carradines' filmography, I wanted you to see films that I had made on his filmography, and I did it. I did what I set out to do.
Let's wrap up Haunting Fear.
Hallelujah! Holy shit! Where's the Tylenol?
Let's do that.
All right, so like I said, love this movie. I just love it. It's filled with so much of this insane kind of energy, and it's just a wonderful idea to think about making a movie with very little in the way of crew and a lot of other things. I just thought it was a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun.
I love all of that. I'm not as big on the movie as you are, but I definitely am inspired by all of that. So I'm right there with you.
I mean, it's for me. It's kind of like what you were saying about Larry Cohen. You know how you said when you watch a Larry Cohen movie, you get inspired.
Yeah.
When I watch this movie, I get inspired because it's a great story. I mean, like, the story behind the making of a movie like this is probably far more interesting than the movie itself, just like Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers.
This does not do it for me like Larry Cohen does, but to each his own.
But what I would say is that when it comes to that kind of hands-on filmmaking where you just grab the equipment and do it, and throw caution to the wind and not care, that's what matters to me. That's the most important thing. I mean, like, he's kind of a guy who says, okay, we're going to make a movie. All right?
Yeah.
I'm turning on the camera. We're going to make a movie, and he's not like, but we have to do this, and we have to consider that, and we have to. No.
Right?
We're making a movie.
We're going to make a fucking movie, and it might suck, but we're going to fucking make it anyway. Yeah. And God bless him for that. That's awesome. I love that.
And to make money doing that. I mean, like, he's living his dream.
Exactly. And and it's amazing, and it's great, and I love it.
All right. On that. Let's end this episode. Extreme Cinema, Action and Exploitation Movies. Angela Gang, David Lawler.
You have been listening to Extreme Cinema with Angela Gang and David Lawler.